Okay, hello everyone. This is Robin, Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Gig Harbor, and I'm calling to order this special meeting of the Gig Harbor City Council on January 26th at noon. We are here joined by Representative Jesse Young, and I believe I will start with a roll call. So Ross Denson, City Council here. Councilmember Wook?
Here.
Councilmember Rodenberg?
Here.
Councilmember Likens?
Here.
Councilmember Barber?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Present.
I think I've got all our council members, and City Clerk Josh, do you want to acknowledge staff present?
We have the council for the roll call, so that's good enough for this meeting.
Perfect. And then I think I will turn it over to Mr. Weiss, if that's okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Denson, Council Member Storsat is not here.
Okay, he is noted as excused, I am sure.
Yeah, he didn't indicate to me that he wouldn't be here, but given his full-time job, I'm not surprised.
I got a message from him saying that he would try to call in. He's going to be on the road.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Okay, perfect. Well, Mr. Weiss, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Just very quickly, appreciate everybody's time. Representative Young, we really appreciate you being here. One of our session check-ins with you, we're about a week away from the first cutoff when bills need to get out of policy committees. And the city, I will say, has been, in my time working for them, has been as engaged as I've ever seen. There's a lot of proposals that they're concerned about and supporting as well. So just happy to have your time. I think maybe first, Representative, if we could hear from you just about how the session's going generally and what your priorities are. And then I know council members will have questions, and if I need to, I'll facilitate, and but hopefully won't. So Representative Young, you want to tell us a little bit about how it's going?
Well, it is going fast. We haven't had a lot of floor activity yet. So that to me tells me that they're not going to be moving a lot of previous bills from last year, because ideally they would have moved those much faster. I think we had about a dozen bills that we took on in the first 2 weeks, which is smaller than the number that progressed forward last year. Because what happens is you get a bunch of bills that will make it off of, say, out of your side of the legislature, in this case, the House. They get over to the Senate and then they don't get through. Well, when the session ends, those bills all revert back to the House of Origin or the body of origin, and then they end up in a certain position. And for sake of brevity, I'll just say it leaves there. And typically what we do in a short session is we queue those ones up again and get them out right away so that they can have the full life possibility of moving through the Senate. And so we haven't done that to much of an extent at all. So either they're going to backload them and load them all together, but that doesn't bode well for the process, because once you move up these bills that originated in the House and passed off the House last year over to the Senate, they still got to go through the entire committee process. And as you noted, the Senate has the same virtual calendar that we do, and their cutoff for committee is happening. So not a lot of stuff progressing forward from last year, which was an interesting development. I've spent a lot of my time on the Public Safety Committee. As you know, I think I touched upon that a little bit at the Gig Harbor Chamber send-off. I have a couple of bills that I'm focused on. The first is the public safety bill. The chief of the fire department here in Gig Harbor testified on it. This bill, believe it or not, we do not have a law in this state, whereas most states do, that prohibit interfering with EMS, first responders, and firefighters when they're trying to perform their duties. So we copied the statute out of Oregon, brought it forward here. That's become a heightened need as a result of some of the legislation that passed last year around policing. And what this does is it frees up our first responders that are trying to respond to a scene to, if someone is impeding their effort, whether it's because they're drunk or they're scared, whatever the cause may be, this bill would, which is getting a lot of support, would allow them to inform the police officer that this person's impeding me, and that then frees up the police officer to interject so that they can save somebody's life. So then we've also been doing a lot of bills to fix the definitions around probable cause or intent. there's a lot of public safety action going on, and that's where I've spent the majority of my time, given the importance of that issue to our community and the state as a whole. I have another bill that's been given some attention, and that deals with data security around your private information. It was just given a hearing in the Transportation Committee. It deals with Department of Licensing and provide big corporations what they're allowed to do. We have restrictions around what information is allowed to be sold, but believe it or not, our statutes, for those of you that are new, by the way, I'm a software engineer, right? So I kind of geek out on some of these bills, but I've served in that capacity on what tend to be very complex intellectual property, data privacy rights legislation. And so this bill would make it, it would safeguard a loophole, because while we prohibit people from selling your information, we're not prohibiting these big data consolidators from giving it away for free. And what we found is that they will sell the data that they're allowed to sell, but they'll sell it at a more premium if the person pays a premium, then they'll give them some of your information away. Things like insurance companies wanting to buy intimate knowledge of your prescription glasses, so that in the case that you're in an auto accident and they can prove that you didn't have your glasses on, they can deny your claim. These are the types of things that we're trying to shut down on behalf of you. So that bill is moving. I know that we have limited time, and I've got about 15 more minutes before I got a public safety meeting. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what I've been focused on, public safety and in some of those issues. I know that there are broader issues around transportation funding and stuff. I'm aware of all those things. Yes, I'm involved in those. I have some bills around tax deferrals and working budget stuff, obviously for Willachit. As you know, I've been working with you guys for a number of years on that. So there's the quick update.
I should have mentioned at the beginning, we just really appreciate your support of the city's capital budget request for the Gateway Sports Complex, and know that you're fully behind that. I know capital budget resources are going to be tight this year, but just thanks for your continued advocacy on that. The other issue that the city has been talking a lot about, I'm just going to put on the table since we don't have very much time, are the proposals that are going forward around mandated density, the missing middle bills. Senate Bill 5670 is the one that appears to be moving forward right now, and it's still in the Senate House Housing and Local Government Committee. It hasn't even gotten out of that committee. It's scheduled to be voted out tomorrow. And then the House bill, the companion House bill is 1782, and it hasn't moved representative out of the House Local Government Committee. But those are extremely concerning for the city. They're both governor requests. And I'm sure you've probably been hearing from residents on this. So if there's more comments, maybe for council or representative, you want to let people know how you're thinking about this, what you're hearing that.
I've already voiced my opposition to this. One of the keys to stopping bad legislation for communities like this is maybe getting out in front of it and heading it off before it moves through the process. And interestingly, okay, great, they had a public hearing, but not seeing it move and we get it past the deadline, then we can move on to other things. This will be dead. There's concern for this for communities like ours. Yeah. So I've voiced my opposition, and I stand against it.
Jesse, thank you. This is Mayor Markley. I apologize. I had technical difficulties getting onto this meeting between my last meeting. Zoom crashed and I restarted my computer. So my apologies. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Denson, for starting the meeting for me. I appreciate that very much. I see a question from Councilmember Wook.
Yes, thank you, Representative Young, for opposing especially 1782. There is another House Bill 1770 that also has to do with giving cities local control. So I'm hoping that you would consider that. It's in rules right now, and I've contacted Representative Caldeir to try to get it out of rules and get it on the floor so we can vote for, so that there can be a vote for giving cities more local control over that issue. So hopefully you'll take a look at that and support it as well. Thank you.
So these energy codes, is this what type of energy is this?
It has to do with buildings.
Okay. Happy to look at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Representative Young? Yes, Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Mayor Markley. Councilmember Young, I know that we sent a letter to to Representative Caldier in regards to that housing density bill. I'm wondering if you got a copy of that. Okay, everyone's nodding. Okay, so, because I think that we had even some ideas for ways that it could be tweaked a bit that would make folks more comfortable in certain smaller cities. So I just want to make sure you saw that.
Well, yeah, so yeah, but let me ask you, do you want it just stopped, or do you want it to move on and have life? And then, I mean, to me, I thought the general push was to just try to stop this, give it some time to think about it, because if what your potential, I guess what I'm trying to clarify, Robin, is if we try to work to make it better, then it continues on and down the path and breathes new life into it. You might, instead of killing it, you might get something you don't want. So,
Good
so
point.
what, yeah, so Jenny, you're kind of saying just kill it?
Kill it. Thank you.
I think we're all nodding. Kill it if you can.
Well, I actually hadn't thought about that option of killing it. I'm Representative Young, so I'll have to give that some thought. To me, I think that some of the objectives are laudable in the bill. And again, I haven't given this a whole lot of thought. I was just trying to figure out what would work best for our community. I mean, I think some of the amendments we suggested would. I do feel like in more transit-oriented communities, there may be some communities that could use these tools to increase their housing availability. So I'm going to be on the fence about that issue since I haven't given the killing it idea any thought.
Yeah, so if the bill progresses, by all means, reach out. We can do another one of these. You can reach out to me informally. You guys all know where my office is. I mean, we can have a quick talking about at least if it does move. The problem that you're going to have is that some of the bigger cities are now your opponent, right? They might want provisions in that bill that don't fit Gig Harbor. And then so we might have to try to perfect it. But generally speaking, I was operating under the notion with the talks that I've had with some of you in private and other members down there, that it was better to stall this one out and try to work on it during the interim and get something better negotiated that way. But if it does move, then by all means, let's work on perfecting it so we don't get pinched in Gig Harbor.
And I will simply say there are, in that letter, we were proposing some modifications to the bill that would remove the mandate on Gig Harbor. And I know there's a few other ideas that are floating around out there. So I certainly agree with you that if we can't kill it, but if it continues to move, there are some options for amending the bill so it is not onerous on the city of Gig Harbor.
Yeah, it's interesting because the two bills that you brought up thus far, this one and then 1770 are kind of diametrically opposed in one sense. One wants to come down with a statewide mandate on you and says you have to do it this way, but the other one is asking to give you local control. So interesting to see both bills like that have progress when fundamentally they're opposite in their endeavor to strengthen or weaken local government.
And if I could just add, I'm working with the group, Annika and I are working with a group of city lobbyists from across the state, including AWC. And I think our feeling at this point right now is just to set your expectations that I think it's going to be very hard to kill that bill. It's a governor's request bill. There is a lot of steam behind it. We're doing everything we can, but if I had to read it right now, I don't know that killing it's going to be the option, but that would be preference.
Josh, has it been scheduled for exec?
The House bill has not, but the Senate bill is moving.
Okay.
So we may need to try to talk about those amendments that we proposed for smaller cities, maybe, or some of those options that we proposed in the letter, seeing how much traction we could get with those if we can't succeed in stalling it.
Where does Senator Randall fall in this? She's not on the Senate bill as I'm looking at it. But the numbers to stop that in the Senate are easier on the Senate floor than they are in the House floor, given the disparity. If I've understood you, correct, then if Emily wants to support the Gig Harbor position of not moving that, then the math gets easier. I'm happy to help whip up votes on the Senate side if that's what it takes. So if that's an avenue, I mean, do we know where she stands?
We haven't heard back yet. She has been hearing from the same constituents that you have been, and she also received the same letter from the city just this morning. We've been in touch with her office this morning. We expect that she's going to provide a written response, and we'll be in touch with her about that. So Don't know exactly yet.
So look, politics aside, there's easy things to do behind the scenes to try to help. I'm more than happy to partner with her if that's where her stance is. We can do it quietly and not have to make politics an issue.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are you hearing from other cities in the 26th, Jesse, about this?
Nope.
Okay, interesting.
Mhm.
What about you, Josh? Are you hearing from Port Orchard, Bremerton, anybody in?
Port Orchard has a slightly different view. They've taken a number of the actions that are included in the bill, so they're not as concerned about it. I think their situation is pretty different than yours.
Okay.
But I will say, there are cities from across the state that are very wound up about this, and it's big cities in King County and it's little cities in other parts. So you are not alone in your concern. But there are cities that are supporting it, just to be clear. Representative Young was absolutely right. There are some cities out there too, and doesn't necessarily break along population lines. It doesn't necessarily break along where you are in the state either.
Okay. Any other questions from council or staff? For Representative Young?
May I bring up one other issue?
Of course.
Yes.
So there is a bill that has to do with accessory dwelling units that is moving. It's a House bill. It's House Bill 1660. It just came out of local government, I believe, earlier this week, and it's in rules. And this basically removes the requirement. It takes away a city's ability to require owner occupancy of accessory dwelling units, which in a lot of cases is something that jurisdictions really want to do. At this point, the city, we've been weighing in opposition to this bill. It is, I would say the politics behind it appear to be, it's pretty much the same people supporting this concept as are supporting the missing middle bills.
Thank you.
But just to make sure you're aware of that and the city's position on that too, as it comes to the floor.
Yeah, these are interesting paradigms because they're generally being pushed behind the emotional play to help with low income housing. But they don't necessarily fit smaller communities like ours. And I think the general notion from the majority party is to just do a one size fits all. And that's I think what we're getting into a problem.
Yeah, we have had some constituents express concern about the opposition to this bill because of property rights. They own a legitimate house that they're using for an Airbnb or a VRBO. They live in another state, but they're operating a legitimate business out of their second home or another home that they own in the city. And so they're afraid that if this passes, then they're going to lose that source of income because they would be forced to move back to Washington and live in the home in order to continue operating it as a VRBO or an Airbnb. What are your thoughts on that? And council too, what are your thoughts on that? It's that one size fits all that doesn't really lend the city much room to come up with our own rules for how these businesses are operated in our city. But I know I've gotten some feedback on that. So just wondering what you all think and what you think, Representative Young, about.
Well, I can be quick. I don't know what I think about it yet because it's in a different committee and I've been stuck on policing bills and I'll have to start looking at it. If it matures enough to get out to the floor, that's what I don't start considering other committee bills until we move to the second phase of the legislature and start looking at them. So it'd be premature for me to comment. I haven't had any chance to deep dive into it. Right now, I'm doing everything on public safety. So.
And thank you for that. That's very, very important. Thoughts by council or Josh or Annika?
I just wanted to say, Mayor, that I believe that bill has been amended to allow, or it will not remove owner occupancy requirements if the unit is being used as a short-term rental.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was recent. I think that was last week. So this is kind of new news on that bill.
Okay, great.
Let me just say that since some of these vehicles seem to be moving through the Senate as the preferred vehicle to move, if I have a lot of sway with some of the members of the Senate. So if you need things done on the Senate side, you don't have to wait until it comes over the House to engage me. If, Robin, for example, if the bill does progress from the Senate and we need to start considering some of the amendments that you were talking about, if Emily wants to run them for you, by all means, go through Emily. But if that's not an avenue for you, come to me and I will get some other people to run them for you in the Senate so that the consideration of some of these amendments has a longer time to mature. Maybe we don't score the win in the Senate, but because it's talked about sooner, by the time it gets over to the House and moves up, we can actually maybe get some progress on it. So that door is open. I'm happy to help in that regard if that's of value to you.
Thank you very much for that. We want to respect your time. We know you have a couple minutes left. Any last minute quick questions from council?
Sports complex. I know you mentioned it again, but we'll end with,
Oh, you're
Oh,
muted.
you're muted.
oh, I was just saying, we really appreciate your support of the sports complex. I know it was mentioned by Josh at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny how those things, because you get them dropped. And when you're in a short session, you drop them, but then it's like a wait and see because the capital budget's negotiated on a separate timeline and done everything different. So yeah, that gets dropped and you do it and then you move on to everything else you got to get done with your timeline. So yeah, the time for negotiating that and making sure that, by the way, I'm understanding that all three of us are supporting it, right?
yes.
Okay, well then, so when the deadline is approaching, that each chair of the capital budget committees have their own timeline for getting those things approved and negotiated, but I'm more than happy to circle back around with everybody to make sure that everybody is earnestly prioritizing that capital budget as opposed to just putting a name on it.
Thank you. I guess, Councilmember Wook.
Yes, how about the tolls on the bridge? Are you helping with getting rid of those tolls? What's your stance on that?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think I have a PhD on how the tolls work on that thing at this point in my career. So yes, interesting. I dropped some of my own bills because they're better qualified. I know that Senator Randall's bill made a lot of headway. She got some news on it, but the fact is that bill can't pass as it is. Apparently Senator Randall doesn't know that these are non-callable bonds. If this finance package had not been so horrendously put together back in the day, I mean, everybody was united, whether it was then Senator Kilmer, Representative Sequist, Pat Lance, or Jan Angel. Everybody at the time lamented the fact that the biggest problem was that you can't refinance the bridge. The bonds are non-callable. That's what made this such an interesting problem to solve, which is why what we did in 2018 with Representative Fye was we came up with a series of we put a bucket of money aside and then made it so that they could, in increments as the bonds matured, be used to pay off the bonds, because you cannot call them early, which means that even if Senator Randall were to get all the hundreds of millions that she's asking for, which is not realistic, but if she were, you can't spend it on the bonds. You can't pay them down. That's one of the problems with the financial structure of it. So what I have is I've drafted a bill. What we can pay off early is the sales tax deferred. But what my bill does is it sets it to be paid off in 2027, which financially benefits the state, because if you can't forgive sales tax on the bridge, if you forgive the sales tax on the bridge, you owe the federal government a huge bill, because the federal government has regulations that say if you charge their money, if you charge sales tax on their money, which our state did when they contributed to the bridge, then they demand that you charge yourself. And so what my bill does is it sets up an exchange in the future biennium that requires the operating budget to pay it, or the transportation budget to pay it, then immediately follows an operating budget transaction back to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, in effect forgiving it without forgiving it, but it does it with a zero fiscal note, so we can so we get a win without having a financial hit on our books. Has issues with bond ratings and everything else. So that's about a $60 million win. As far as getting other money, the key to doing it is just putting more money aside into the bucket that we already created in 18, so that as the bonds mature, if there is a maturing of a bond that's greater than the revenue on the bridge, then it takes care of it. So that fix is already in place. So
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Yeah. So yeah, with that I really appreciate chatting with you all today. And I'm happy to do it again. Or Josh, you've got my number, so.
Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank
Yep,
you,
thank you.
Representative Young.
Have a great day, guys.
Thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the order, council, or are we ready to adjourn? I don't see any hands. How about you, City Administrator, anything?
Nope, I have nothing.
Okay. All right, well, have a great day, everybody. Thank you, Josh and Annika, as always. See you soon.
Thank you.